The Galactic Council chamber hummed with the low vibrations of 1,000 different species, each contributing their own unique sounds to the symphony of interstellar politics. High above the polished obsidian floor, floating platforms held representatives from across the galaxy's spiral arms. The air itself shimmered with translation fields, converting thoughts and words into comprehensible meaning for beings whose very concept of communication defied universal understanding. At the center of it all sat the Apex Council, 7 beings representing the oldest and most powerful civilizations known to exist. Their combined influence stretched across 97% of charted space, controlling trade routes, military fleets, and the very laws that governed interstellar society. HFY, the crystalline representative of the Vex Dominion, raised one of her 6 arms in a gesture that commanded immediate silence. Her voice, when it came, resonated through quantum frequencies that bypassed the need for vocal cords entirely. "We gather today to discuss a matter of increasing concern," she announced, her words causing ripples of anticipation throughout the chamber. "The species designation, human, file reference, Sol 3, status, quarantine level 7. A collective rustle swept through the assembly. Level 7 quarantines were rarely discussed in open session. They represented civilizations so dangerous, so unpredictable, that even acknowledging their existence was considered a security risk. Admiral Korthak, a massive insectoid whose chitinous armor bore the scars of 100 battles, clicked his mandibles in what his species considered thoughtful contemplation. His 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display that materialized above the chamber's center, showing a small yellow star system on the galaxy's outer rim. "Remind us of the circumstances that led to this classification," Korthak requested, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had personally overseen 3 genocidal campaigns against species deemed too volatile for galactic society. The display shifted, showing detailed surveillance data collected over the past several centuries. Images of blue-green planets, sprawling cities, and the distinctive bipedal forms of humanity filled the projection space. HFY's form brightened as she accessed the archived reports. Initial contact protocols were established 437 standard cycles ago, when our long-range scouts first detected organized radio transmissions from the Sol system. Standard procedure called for a 30-cycle observation period before formal contact. The chamber's attention focused entirely on her words. First contact protocols were sacred law among the galactic community, refined over millions of years of expansion and countless encounters with emerging civilizations. The process had been perfected to ensure smooth integration of new species into galactic society while minimizing cultural contamination. The observation period revealed significant anomalies, HFY continued, her crystalline form pulsing with each word. The humans displayed technological advancement rates that exceeded all known mathematical models. In the space of 1 standard cycle, they progressed from primitive chemical rockets to fusion-powered vessels. In 5 cycles, they had mastered quantum mechanics and begun experimenting with faster-than-light communication. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembly. Such advancement rates were theoretically impossible. Most species required millennia to progress from spaceflight to FTL capability. High Counselor Veltar, an ancient being whose gaseous form had witnessed the rise and fall of entire galactic epochs, swirled with patterns that indicated deep concern. Surely there were other factors to consider. Raw technological advancement, while concerning, is not unprecedented. Indeed, HFY agreed. However, technological capability was merely the beginning of our concerns. Behavioral analysis revealed patterns that defied all established models of species development. The holographic display shifted again, showing detailed psychological profiles and sociological studies. Charts and graphs demonstrated human behavior under various stress conditions, their response to resource scarcity, and their reaction to perceived threats. Humans display what our xenopsychologists term impossible persistence, HFY explained. When faced with extinction-level threats, rather than adapting through biological evolution or technological symbiosis, they simply refuse to die. They display remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming odds, often achieving victory through what can only be described as stubborn determination. Admiral Korthak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. Surely you exaggerate. No species can achieve victory through willpower alone. Observe, HFY replied, commanding the display to show a series of historical human conflicts. Images of ancient battlefields, naval warfare, and global conflicts played out above the assembly. This species has never experienced true peace. Their entire recorded history consists of continuous warfare against environmental challenges, natural disasters, and each other. Yet rather than destroying themselves as predicted by all sociological models, each conflict has made them stronger, more adaptable, more unified. The assembly watched in stunned silence as humanity's greatest achievements played out before them. Cities rising from nuclear ash, populations surviving ice ages through sheer determination, civilizations rebuilding from total collapse, emerging stronger than before. Most concerning, HFY continued, is their approach to problem-solving. When presented with impossible challenges, humans do not seek compromise or adaptation. They break the rules that make the challenge impossible. They refuse to accept limitations imposed by physics, biology, or logic. High Counselor Tethkar, whose species had mastered biotechnology to the point where they could reshape matter at the molecular level, expressed skepticism through a complex series of pheromone releases. Surely their achievements can be explained through conventional means. Perhaps they received guidance from an advanced civilization. Negative, HFY responded firmly. Extensive surveillance confirms that humans developed all technology independently. Moreover, their methods often violate established scientific principles. They routinely achieve results that should be impossible using techniques that make no logical sense. The display showed examples of human engineering, structures that defied conventional physics, machines that operated beyond theoretical efficiency limits, weapons that delivered destruction, far exceeding their apparent power output. When our scientists attempted to reverse engineer captured human technology, HFY revealed, they discovered that the devices should not function. The mathematical principles underlying their operation are internally contradictory, yet they work perfectly when operated by humans. A wave of unease swept through the chamber. Technology that functioned only for its creators suggested capabilities that bordered on the supernatural. Counselor Kixmoth, representing the galaxy's premier merchant consortium, raised concerns about economic implications. What of trade potential? Surely a species with such technological capability would make valuable partners. Economic analysis proves equally disturbing, HFY replied. Humans appear to operate under post-scarcity economic principles, despite lacking the industrial capacity to support such a system. They routinely share resources freely, prioritize collective welfare over individual profit, and make decisions based on principles rather than material gain. The merchant representatives throughout the chamber expressed shock and confusion. Post-scarcity economics were theoretical constructs, mathematical impossibilities that existed only in academic models. Furthermore, HFY continued, humans demonstrate alarming disregard for personal safety when protecting others. They will sacrifice themselves for complete strangers, risk everything to save a single individual, and refuse to abandon those they consider allies regardless of logical considerations. Admiral Korthak's armor plates shifted as he processed this information. In his experience, such behavior indicated either severe mental deficiency or dangerous fanaticism. Neither possibility suggested a species suitable for galactic integration. The final factor in our assessment, HFY announced, concerns human military capability. Despite lacking advanced weapons technology, human combat effectiveness exceeds all known parameters. They routinely defeat superior opponents through tactics that should not work. The display showed combat simulations based on observed human behavior. Small human forces defeating massive alien armies. Individual humans surviving in hostile environments that would kill entire squadrons of galactic marines. Human ships outmaneuvering vessels with superior technology and firepower. Our wargame simulations consistently show the same result, HFY revealed. In any direct military confrontation between humans and galactic forces, humans achieve victory ratios that range from unlikely to mathematically impossible. Even when facing overwhelming numerical and technological disadvantages, simulated human forces find ways to win. High Counselor Veltar's gaseous form swirled with patterns of deep contemplation. What specifically makes them so effective in combat? They break every rule of warfare, Admiral Korthak responded, his voice carrying grudging respect. They ignore cover when it suits them. They attack when they should retreat. They make stands in indefensible positions and somehow hold them. They turn their weaknesses into strengths and find advantages where none should exist. The assembly absorbed this information in uncomfortable silence. The implications were staggering. If humans could not be defeated militarily, and if their technology operated beyond known scientific principles, they represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Based on these findings, HFY announced, the Apex Council established the Sol Quarantine. No galactic vessel is permitted to enter human space. No communication is authorized with human entities. No technology is to be shared or exchanged. Humanity is to be contained within their solar system until such time as they can be properly understood and classified. Counselor Kixmoth raised an objection. Surely isolation is unnecessary. With proper management, humans could be gradually integrated into galactic society. Integration attempts were considered, HFY replied. However, psychological profiles suggest that humans would not accept subordinate status within galactic hierarchy. They possess an inherent drive toward independence and self-determination that makes them unsuitable for conventional integration protocols. Moreover, Admiral Korthak added, humans display what they term pack bonding behavior. They form emotional attachments to other species, treating them as extensions of their own family units. This behavior could destabilize existing social hierarchies throughout galactic space. The implications of this revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. Galactic society was built upon carefully maintained species hierarchies and controlled interaction protocols. If humans began forming emotional bonds with other species, it could undermine the fundamental structures that maintained order across the galaxy. High Counselor Tethkar released pheromones indicating concern. What evidence exists of this pack bonding behavior? Extensive data, HFY responded, commanding the display to show recordings of human interactions with various Earth species. Humans regularly form lifelong emotional bonds with creatures that have no logical value. They keep companion animals, maintain wildlife preserves, and demonstrate genuine affection for beings they cannot even communicate with. The recordings showed humans caring for injured animals, playing with domesticated creatures, and expressing grief over the death of non-human companions. To species that viewed other life forms as resources or tools, such behavior was completely incomprehensible. Furthermore, HFY continued, analysis of human fiction and entertainment media suggests they would attempt to form similar bonds with any alien species they encountered. They consistently portray positive relationships with hypothetical alien life forms, often prioritizing alien welfare over human interests. This revelation caused considerable agitation throughout the chamber. Most galactic species maintained strict hierarchical relationships based on technological capability and military power. The concept of voluntarily subordinating one's own species' interests for the benefit of aliens was not just foreign, but potentially devastating to galactic stability. Counselor Veltar swirled thoughtfully. Have there been any attempts to breach the quarantine? Several, Admiral Korthak admitted reluctantly. 3 unauthorized scouting missions have been dispatched to the Sol system over the past 2 centuries. None returned. Were they detected and destroyed? Tethkar asked. Unknown, Korthak replied. The vessels simply disappeared. No wreckage was found. No distress signals were received. They entered the Sol system and vanished without trace. The implication hung heavy in the chamber air. If humans had somehow detected and eliminated advanced galactic scout ships without leaving evidence, their capabilities were even more dangerous than suspected. Additionally, Zephyrhai added, long-range monitoring has detected concerning developments within the Sol system. Human space activities have increased exponentially. They have established permanent bases on multiple planets and moons. Most disturbing, they have begun construction of what appears to be interstellar vessels. The chamber erupted in concerned chatter. If humans were preparing for interstellar travel, the quarantine would soon become meaningless. Construction analysis suggests these vessels incorporate technologies we do not understand, Zephyrhai continued. Power signatures exceed theoretical maximums for known propulsion systems. Hull materials appear to be composed of elements that do not exist in standard periodic classification. Admiral Korthak's carapace shifted as he processed this information. How long before they achieve interstellar capability? Based on current construction rates, Zephyrhai calculated, first interstellar vessels will be completed within 50 standard cycles. Once operational, they will be capable of reaching inhabited systems within the galaxy's outer rim. High Counselor Veltar's form darkened with worry. What are the projected consequences if humans enter galactic space? The holographic display shifted to show complex sociological models and probability matrices. Charts and graphs painted a picture of cascading disruption throughout galactic civilization. Complete destabilization of existing order, Zephyrhai announced grimly. Human philosophical and social structures are fundamentally incompatible with galactic hierarchy. Contact between humans and subjugated species would likely result in widespread rebellion. Their technology could upset established power balances. Their military capabilities could threaten even apex civilizations. The full scope of the human threat was now clear to every being in the chamber. This was not merely another species to be catalogued and integrated. Humanity represented an existential threat to the galaxy as they knew it. The quarantine must be maintained at all costs, Admiral Korthak declared. If necessary, we must be prepared to use military force to prevent human expansion. Military force may prove ineffective, Zephyrhai warned. As previously noted, human combat capabilities exceed known parameters. Direct confrontation could result in galactic military forces being defeated by a species that has not yet achieved interstellar travel. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the full implications became clear. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations, with their massive fleets and sophisticated weaponry, were potentially powerless against a species that still lived on a single planet. Counselor Kixmoth made one final attempt at finding an alternative solution. Perhaps diplomatic contact could be established, trade agreements, technology exchanges, mutual benefit arrangements. Impossible, Zephyrhai replied firmly. Human psychology profiles indicate they would demand equal status in any diplomatic relationship. They do not accept subordinate positions. They negotiate from positions of equality regardless of actual power differentials. Such an approach would legitimize their claim to galactic citizenship and encourage other species to demand similar treatment. The debate continued for several more hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Humanity represented a threat unlike any the galaxy had ever encountered. They possessed impossible technology, displayed incomprehensible psychology, and demonstrated military capabilities that defied logical analysis. The quarantine would be maintained, the Sol system would remain forbidden territory, and the galaxy would continue to hope that the barrier would hold, that humanity would somehow destroy itself before achieving interstellar capability. But deep in the classified archives, beyond even the Apex Council's security clearance, lay reports that suggested it might already be too late. Strange readings from deep space monitoring stations, unexplained gravitational anomalies in supposedly empty systems, energy signatures that matched no known technology appearing and disappearing across the galaxy's outer reaches. Perhaps the humans were already out there, watching and waiting, studying their captors just as they themselves had been studied. Perhaps the quarantine had never been as secure as the galactic leadership believed. And if that were true, then the galaxy was about to learn firsthand why an entire interstellar civilization had declared a single planet too dangerous to approach. Captain Sarah Chen adjusted her environmental suit one final time before stepping through the airlock of the research vessel Pathfinder. The artificial gravity of the alien ship felt different somehow, lighter, yet more substantial, as if the very metal beneath her feet operated under physical laws she didn't quite understand. 3 months had passed since humanity's first successful capture of a galactic scout ship. The vessel had appeared at the edge of the Sol system, just beyond Pluto's orbit, apparently attempting a passive scanning run of human activities. What its crew hadn't anticipated was humanity's new detection grid, a network of quantum sensors that could identify faster-than-light signatures from distances that should have been impossible. The alien ship's technology was impressive, but it had one critical flaw. It was designed to operate undetected against known galactic sensor arrays. Unfortunately for its crew, human sensors worked on principles that galactic science declared impossible. Dr. James Harrison, humanity's leading xenotechnology specialist, was already deep in conversation with the ship's only surviving crew member when Sarah entered the makeshift laboratory. The alien was unlike anything in Earth's fossil records or evolutionary imagination. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, its crystalline structure refracted light in patterns that suggested complex internal processes. 6 arms extended from its central mass, each ending in manipulator appendages that seemed to shift between solid and gaseous states at will. "Any progress with translation?" Sarah asked, activating her suit's recording systems. Everything about this encounter would be analyzed by teams across Earth and the growing network of human colonies. "Some," James replied, not looking up from his tablet display. "The ship's computer systems contain extensive linguistic databases. We've managed to establish basic communication protocols, though the conceptual gaps are significant." The alien, who had identified itself through a complex harmonic sequence that roughly translated to Zix Thara, turned its attention to Sarah. When it spoke, the words emerged as pure sound frequencies that the translation system converted into heavily accented English. "You are the military representative," it stated rather than asked. "Your people have violated sacred laws by capturing this vessel." Sarah studied the being carefully before responding. "Your people have been watching us for centuries without our knowledge or consent. I'd say that violates a few laws as well." Zix Thara's form flickered with patterns that James had learned to interpret as surprise or confusion. "Impossible. Your species lacks the technological capability to detect our observation methods. All galactic protocols confirm this assessment." "Your galactic protocols were wrong," Sarah replied simply. We've known about your surveillance for over 50 years. We just chose not to interfere until now." The revelation sent cascades of color through Zixthara's crystalline structure. According to the ship's databases, no primitive species had ever detected galactic observation before achieving interstellar capability. It was considered a universal constant, as reliable as the laws of physics themselves. "How?" Zixthara demanded. "Your technology operates on principles that should not function. Your detection methods violate established physical laws." James looked up from his tablet with a slight smile. "That's what makes this so interesting. From our perspective, your technology is the one that doesn't make sense. Your sensors work on quantum principles that we mastered decades ago, but they're limited by assumptions that we never learned to accept." Sarah leaned against the laboratory wall, trying to process the implications of what she was hearing. "Explain that in terms a soldier can understand." "It's like this," James said, setting down his tablet. "Imagine two groups trying to open a locked door. The first group spends thousands of years developing sophisticated lock-picking tools, learning to work within the system's constraints. The second group simply tries turning the handle and discovers the door was never actually locked. That analogy is imperfect, but adequate," Zixthara admitted. "Your species approaches problem-solving through methods that galactic science considers impossible. You achieve results that violate established limitations." Sarah's expression hardened. "And because we don't play by your rules, you decided we were too dangerous to contact?" "Correct." Zixthara's form brightened, as if pleased by her understanding. "Species that cannot be predicted pose existential threats to galactic stability. The quarantine was established for the protection of all civilized beings." "Civilized," Sarah repeated, her voice carrying an edge of anger. "You mean beings who accept their place in your hierarchy? Yes, order must be maintained. Each species must accept its appropriate role within the greater galactic community. Chaos results from equality." James and Sarah exchanged glances. This was the core of the philosophical divide that made coexistence between humanity and galactic civilization impossible. Every human instinct rebelled against the concept of predetermined hierarchical roles based on technological capability or evolutionary age. "Show me this galactic community," Sarah requested. "I want to understand what we're supposedly being protected from." Zixthara hesitated, its form flickering through several complex patterns before responding. "Such information is classified beyond your species' clearance level." "Our clearance level was determined by people who never bothered to ask our opinion," Sarah replied coldly. "I'm asking now." After a long moment, Zixthara manipulated the ship's control systems, causing a massive holographic display to materialize in the center of the laboratory. The projection showed the Milky Way galaxy in stunning detail, with different colored indicators marking the territories of various species and civilizations. "The galaxy contains approximately 400 billion star systems," Zixthara explained. "Of these, nearly 2 billion are inhabited by sapient species. The vast majority exist under the protection and guidance of the Galactic Council." Sarah studied the display carefully. The pattern was unmistakable. The galaxy's central regions were dominated by large territorial blocks marked in gold and silver, indicating the apex civilizations. Surrounding them in concentric rings were smaller territories marked in various other colors, representing less advanced species. The outer rim, where Earth was located, was mostly marked in red. "What does red mean?" she asked, though she suspected she already knew. "Quarantined systems," Zixthara confirmed. "Species deemed too dangerous or unpredictable for contact. There are currently 47 such systems throughout the galaxy." James leaned forward with interest. "What happened to the other quarantined species?" Zixthara's form dimmed noticeably. "Various outcomes. Some destroyed themselves through warfare or environmental collapse. Others were eventually deemed safe for limited contact. A few required more direct intervention. "What kind of intervention?" Sarah demanded. "Sterilization," Zixthera admitted quietly. "When quarantine fails to contain a threat, galactic security sometimes requires permanent solutions." The laboratory fell into shocked silence. Sarah felt a cold fury building in her chest as the full implications became clear. Humanity wasn't just being watched and contained. They were being evaluated for potential extermination. "How many species have been sterilized?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. 17, Zixthera replied. Each case was carefully reviewed and approved by the full Apex Council. The decisions were based on comprehensive threat assessments and extensive deliberation. And what would it take for humanity to be added to that list? Zixthera's form pulsed with complex patterns. Evidence of aggressive expansion beyond your solar system. Development of weapons technology capable of threatening galactic infrastructure. Attempts to spread your philosophical and social systems to other species. Sarah looked at James, seeing her own thoughts reflected in his expression. By galactic standards, humanity was already guilty of all three offenses. Human colonies now existed throughout the Sol system and in several nearby star systems. Human technology regularly violated theoretical limitations, and human philosophy was fundamentally incompatible with galactic hierarchy. "There's something I need to tell you both," Sarah said slowly. "The reason I'm here isn't just to interrogate our guest. Command has been monitoring galactic communications traffic for weeks now. We know about the military buildup in nearby systems." Zixthera's entire form went rigid. "What military buildup?" 17 galactic fleets have been positioned within 50 light-years of Sol, Sarah revealed. Total ship count exceeds 10,000 vessels, including several Dreadnought-class command ships. Our analysts estimate they're preparing for a sterilization operation. The color drained from Zixthera's crystalline structure. "Impossible. Such an operation would require approval from the Apex Council. The procedures alone would take years to complete." "Unless they've already completed the procedures," James suggested grimly. "How long does it typically take from threat assessment to sterilization?" "Varies by species and circumstances," Zixthera replied automatically. "For quarantined species showing signs of imminent breakout, emergency protocols can reduce the timeline to as little as 6 months. Sarah did the math in her head. 6 months would put us right at the deadline. First human interstellar colony ship is scheduled to launch in 8 weeks. "The New Horizon," James confirmed. "Destination, Alpha Centauri. Full colony complement of 50,000 people, plus industrial infrastructure to establish a permanent human presence outside the Sol system." Zixthera's form began pulsing rapidly, patterns of what could only be described as panic flickering across its surface. "You cannot proceed with that launch. The moment humans establish presence outside Sol system, emergency protocols will be triggered automatically. The sterilization fleets will attack immediately." "Then we have a problem," Sarah said calmly. "Because that launch is happening whether the galactic community likes it or not. Humanity doesn't accept limitations imposed by people who never bothered to introduce themselves." "You don't understand," Zixthera pleaded. "Those fleets represent the combined military might of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Technologies developed over millions of years. Weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. Your species cannot possibly survive a direct confrontation." James looked up from his tablet where he had been reviewing intercepted galactic communications. "Actually, that raises an interesting question. If galactic technology is so advanced, why haven't they already attacked? Why wait for us to break quarantine?" Zixthera hesitated, its form flickering with patterns that suggested internal conflict. "Legal protocols must be observed. Galactic law requires clear evidence of quarantine breach before sterilization operations can commence. Additionally what?" Sarah pressed. There are concerns about human military capabilities, Zixthera admitted reluctantly. War game simulations have produced inconsistent results. Some scenarios show galactic forces achieving total victory within hours. Others suggest human forces might achieve tactical superiority through unconventional methods. Unconventional methods, Sarah repeated thoughtfully. You mean the same impossibilities that let us detect your ships and capture your technology? Precisely. Human problem-solving approaches do not conform to established tactical doctrine. This creates uncertainty in military planning. James stood up and began pacing the laboratory. So they're afraid of us, but they can't legally attack until we give them justification. Meanwhile, we're planning to give them that justification in 8 weeks. 6 weeks now, Sarah corrected, checking her chronometer. Construction on the New Horizon is ahead of schedule. This is insane, Zixthera declared. You must cancel the launch. Negotiate a diplomatic solution. Surely reasonable beings can find common ground. Sarah studied the alien for a long moment before responding. What would that common ground look like? Humanity accepting permanent containment in our home system, submitting to galactic authority without representation, abandoning our colonies and research programs. Yes, Zixthera replied immediately. Those are reasonable terms for ensuring peaceful coexistence. No, Sarah said firmly. They're not. Humanity doesn't accept limitations imposed by others without our consent. We don't submit to authority we didn't choose. And we definitely don't abandon our people to satisfy the fears of civilizations that couldn't be bothered to talk to us before deciding we were too dangerous to exist. The laboratory fell silent, except for the quiet humming of ship systems and life support. The fundamental divide between human and galactic thinking had been laid bare, and it was clear that no compromise was possible. Then you choose war, Zixthera said quietly, and your species will be destroyed for that choice. Maybe, Sarah acknowledged, but we'll face that destruction as free beings making our own decisions. That's more than your galactic community seems willing to offer. James had been quiet during this exchange, but now he looked up with an expression that mixed excitement and concern. There's something else we need to consider. The captured ship's computer systems contain detailed information about galactic civilization, including military capabilities, political structures, and technological specifications. What are you suggesting? Sarah asked. I'm suggesting that if we're going to war anyway, we might as well make sure we understand our enemies. James gestured toward the holographic display still showing galactic territories. These quarantine zones represent 47 systems that were deemed too dangerous for contact. What if we're not the only species that refuses to accept galactic authority? Sarah felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. You're thinking about potential allies. I'm thinking about 46 other civilizations that might be interested in fighting for their freedom instead of accepting containment. Zixthera's form began pulsing with alarm patterns. You cannot seriously be considering contact with quarantined species. Some of those systems contain civilizations that make your species appear peaceful by comparison. Peaceful isn't the same as harmless, Sarah replied, and sometimes the enemy of your enemy really is your friend. The implications were staggering. If humanity could make contact with other quarantined civilizations, if they could organize some kind of alliance, the galactic balance of power might not be as stable as it appeared. 47 systems represented a significant portion of galactic territory, and if even half of them joined a rebellion against galactic authority, the result would be civil war on an unprecedented scale. This conversation has taken an unfortunate turn, Zixthera stated formally. I must inform you that under galactic law, discussion of rebellion against lawful authority constitutes a crime punishable by immediate sterilization. Good thing galactic law doesn't apply to us, Sarah replied cheerfully. We never agreed to be bound by it. The galaxy may not survive the consequences of human defiance, Zixthera warned. James looked up from his continuing analysis of the alien databases. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. A little chaos to shake up the established order. Sarah nodded slowly. The path forward was becoming clear. Humanity would proceed with interstellar expansion as planned. They would make contact with other quarantined civilizations, and when the galactic fleets arrived to enforce their version of order, they would discover that imposing hierarchy on beings who refused to accept it was significantly more difficult than their models suggested. The war was coming whether humanity wanted it or not. But unlike the galactic leadership assumed, humans weren't planning to face it alone. Admiral Korthak's war room aboard the dreadnought Galactic Justice hummed with quiet efficiency as his staff processed the latest intelligence reports. Holographic displays showed the positions of 17 galactic fleets arranged in a perfect containment formation around the Sol system. 10,000 ships representing the combined might of the galaxy's apex civilizations, all waiting for a single human vessel to cross the invisible barrier that separated quarantine from open rebellion. The irony was not lost on him that the largest military operation in galactic history was being conducted against a species that still lived on a single planet. Yet every strategic analysis confirmed the necessity. Humanity had to be contained before they could spread their chaos throughout civilized space. "Status report," he commanded, his mandibles clicking with impatience. Commander Velnix, his chief tactical officer, materialized beside the main display table through quantum telepresence. Her gaseous form swirled with patterns indicating concern. "Human activity has increased dramatically over the past 48 hours, she reported. Massive energy signatures detected throughout their solar system. Construction of their interstellar vessel has accelerated beyond all previous estimates. Timeline? Original projections suggested 6 weeks until launch readiness. Current analysis indicates the vessel could be operational within 72 hours. Korthak's carapace plates shifted as he processed this information. Accelerated construction timelines suggested humans had anticipated the galactic response. They were rushing to break quarantine before sterilization protocols could be implemented. Have they detected our fleet positions? Unknown. Their detection capabilities exceed theoretical parameters, so we must assume they are aware of our presence. However, they have made no attempts at communication or negotiation. This troubled Korthak more than he cared to admit. Every previous species faced with sterilization protocols had attempted diplomatic contact once they realized the scale of forces arrayed against them. Humans appeared to be ignoring the threat entirely, proceeding with their plans as if 17 galactic fleets were merely an inconvenience. "Sir," interrupted Lieutenant Zefka, the communications specialist, "we're receiving a transmission from the captured scout vessel. It's unusual." Elaborate. "The transmission originates from within the Sol system, but it's being broadcast on galactic emergency frequencies using our own encryption protocols. The message is addressed to all fleet commanders simultaneously." Korthak felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. No quarantined species should have access to galactic encryption systems, let alone the capability to break them and use them for their own purposes. "Display the message," he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show a human female in what appeared to be a military uniform. Her expression was calm, almost friendly, as she began to speak in perfect galactic standard language. "Greetings to the commanders of the 17 fleets currently positioned around our solar system. I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, commander of the Sol Defense Force. I believe we need to have a conversation." Murmurs of shock rippled through the war room. Not only had humans detected the supposedly invisible fleet positions, they had somehow learned galactic standard and acquired the technical capability to communicate across interstellar distances. "Before you take any hostile action," the human continued, "I suggest you review the data package being transmitted alongside this message. You'll find it contains some information that might change your perspective on the current situation." "Are we receiving a data transmission?" Korthak demanded. Yes, sir, Zefka confirmed nervously. Massive data stream, heavily encrypted but using our own protocols. It appears to contain detailed intelligence reports, star charts, and fleet movement orders. The implications hit Korthak like a physical blow. If humans had access to fleet movement orders, they knew not just the positions of ships, but their operational parameters, supply lines, and strategic objectives. How is this possible? He asked, though he dreaded the answer. Unknown, sir. The encryption should be unbreakable by any civilization below galactic technical standards. Admiral Vasquez continued speaking as if she could hear their conversation. I know this situation is unprecedented. No quarantine species has ever achieved this level of capability before breaking containment. But then, no quarantine species has ever been quite like us. The display shifted to show detailed star charts of galactic space. Red markers indicated the locations of all quarantined systems, while blue markers showed something that made Korthak's blood run cold. Over the past 6 months, Vasquez explained, humanity has established communication with 43 of the 47 quarantined civilizations in this galaxy. Turns out, we're not the only species that objects to being imprisoned without trial. The strategic implications were staggering. If humans had somehow contacted other quarantined species, the galactic containment system might be facing simultaneous breakouts across multiple sectors. Furthermore, Vasquez continued, our analysis of galactic military doctrine has revealed some interesting vulnerabilities in your operational planning. You've spent so long maintaining control over compliant species that you've forgotten how to fight enemies who refuse to follow your rules. Commander Velnix's form swirled frantically. Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures from quarantined systems throughout the galaxy. It appears multiple species are powering up previously dormant technologies. Korthak stared at the display in growing horror. The carefully maintained order that had governed galactic civilization for millions of years was collapsing in real time. 43 quarantined systems were simultaneously preparing for breakout, and the galactic military was positioned to deal with only one of them. The data package contains detailed tactical assessments of each quarantined species, Admiral Vasquez continued. I think you'll find that several of them possess capabilities that exceed even human parameters. The Vorthak, for example, specialize in quantum warfare techniques that can disable entire fleets instantaneously. The Keelthin have mastered biological weapons that can adapt to any known defensive system. As if summoned by her words, new contacts began appearing on the galactic sensor networks. Ships unlike anything in known databases were emerging from previously silent systems. Some appeared to be constructed from living tissue. Others existed partially outside normal space-time. A few seemed to violate the laws of physics simply by existing. But here's the really interesting part, Vasquez said with a slight smile. We've all been talking, sharing information, learning from each other, and we've come to a unanimous conclusion about the galactic status quo. The display shifted again, now showing a complex three-dimensional map of proposed territorial divisions. The galaxy was carved up into new zones of influence that bore no resemblance to existing political boundaries. We're declaring the quarantine system illegal and demanding full representation in galactic government, Vasquez announced. Each quarantined species will establish sovereign territory and maintain independent military forces. The Galactic Council can either accept these terms and begin negotiations for a new interstellar order, or they can try to fight 44 species simultaneously. Korthak tried to process the strategic implications. Fighting one quarantined species was theoretically manageable, though wargame results had been inconsistent. Fighting 44 simultaneously was beyond impossible. The galactic military simply didn't have the resources or logistical capability to wage war on that scale. Sir, reported the intelligence officer, we're receiving similar transmissions from quarantined systems throughout the galaxy. They're all making identical demands and threatening coordinated military action. Coordinated how? Korthak asked, though he suspected the answer would be deeply unpleasant. Unknown, sir. But the timing suggests sophisticated interstellar communication networks that we haven't detected. They appear to be operating under unified command structure. Admiral Vasquez seemed to anticipate their concerns. I know what you're thinking. How did primitive quarantined species develop the capability for real-time galactic communication? How did they coordinate simultaneous breakouts across thousands of light years? How did they share technology and intelligence without any galactic authority detecting the exchanges? She paused dramatically before continuing. The answer is simple. You taught us that the universe is much larger and more complex than any single civilization can understand. You quarantined us because we solved problems in ways you couldn't predict, but you never considered that we might teach those solutions to each other. The display showed human ships unlike anything in their technology databases. Vessels that seemed to blend organic and mechanical components. Drive systems that created no detectable emissions. Weapons that fired projectiles made of crystallized time and space. Humanity has contributed our own specialties to this alliance, Vasquez explained. Our talent for breaking rules that shouldn't be breakable, our ability to achieve impossible results through stubborn refusal to accept limitations, and most importantly, our skill at making friends with people you've taught us to fear. Korthak realized with growing dread that the galactic military was facing an entirely new form of warfare. Not just technologically advanced enemies, but ideologically unified opponents who shared capabilities and coordinated strategies. The quarantine system had inadvertently created the perfect conditions for alliance formation among the galaxy's most dangerous species. You have 12 hours to begin withdrawing your fleets, Vasquez concluded. After that, we start expanding whether you like it or not. And trust me, you really don't want to find out what 44 quarantined species can accomplish when they stop trying to be reasonable. The transmission ended, leaving Korthak's war room in stunned silence. Every strategic calculation that had justified the sterilization operation was now meaningless. The galactic military was positioned to fight one species and had instead discovered they were facing a coordinated rebellion involving nearly 50 different civilizations. Sir, Commander Velnik said quietly, what are your orders? Korthak studied the tactical displays, showing the impossible array of forces now arrayed against galactic authority. Ships that violated known physics, weapons based on scientific principles that didn't exist, allies who had learned to combine their unique capabilities into something greater than the sum of their parts. The great irony was finally clear to him. The Galactic Council had spent millions of years creating a perfect hierarchy based on technological capability and evolutionary advancement. They had assumed that more advanced civilizations would naturally dominate less advanced ones, and that this domination would create stability. But they had made one critical error. They had quarantined the species that refused to accept domination, isolating them from galactic society without considering that isolation might allow them to develop alternatives to hierarchy itself. Now those alternatives were about to be imposed on a galaxy that had forgotten how to function without rigid control structures. Species that had accepted subordinate positions for millennia were about to learn that freedom was possible. The careful balance of power that had maintained order was about to be shattered by beings who had never accepted that balance in the first place. Sir? Velnix repeated. Your orders? Korthak looked around his war room at officers who had trained their entire lives to maintain galactic order through superior firepower. They were among the finest military minds in known space, experts in strategy and tactics, developed over eons of successful expansion. None of it mattered now. They were facing enemies who played by different rules, used impossible weapons, and refused to accept defeat even when logic demanded it. Worse, they were facing enemies who had learned to work together despite fundamental differences in biology, psychology, and philosophy. The quarantine hadn't contained humanity and its fellow rebels. It had given them time to become something the galaxy had never seen before, a unified alliance of species that refused to be controlled. "Signal all fleet commanders," Korthak ordered finally. "Begin withdrawal to minimum safe distance, and send a priority message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we need to start learning how to negotiate with equals." Outside the Galactic Justice, 43 other civilizations were preparing for their first taste of freedom in millions of years, and at the center of it all, humanity was doing what they did best, turning an impossible situation into an opportunity to make friends and break rules. The galaxy would never be the same. And perhaps, Korthak thought as he watched his mighty fleets retreat from a single star system, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. The age of quarantine was over. The age of equals was about to begin.